Don't my Oreo.
Okay, good.
Do we really know what happened?
The brother did
The
that.
brother. That's what I thought too.
I mean, that seems like kind of obvious.
Do you want to talk about death?
Yeah. I mean,
Murdery thingy.
Butta.
Betty bought some butter.
Sally sells seashores by the sea. Nope.
But she said this butter's bitter.
So
If I put it in my batter, it but make my batter bitter.
True.
So, Betty bought a bit of better butter, put it in the bitter butter. Now her bitter butter was but better.
I slit the sheets I slit, and upon the slitted sheets I sit.
Shit!
No, I didn't say shit.
I am a mother
Pheasant plucker. I pluck
and I like
mother.
to pluck mother pheasants.
That's the best one.
That is the best one.
This is Mystery Murdery Thingy.
Yay.
This is a podcast where we do vocal warm-ups and we talk
No.
about mysteries.
This is a book you're reading.
This is a novel. It's called
This is a podcast?
Shit We Talk About. You're a podcast.
No.
It's true.
Am I a podcast?
I don't know. What is anything?
What is anything? That's
That's
what
my
we're
topic.
discussing today.
Good segue.
Who are you?
I'm Mario, or maybe I'm not.
I'm Chloe, or maybe I'm not.
You stole my joke.
No, I was trying to be like clever and like cute
Me too.
and quirky.
Great. We're like two like Zoe Deschanel's. We're like super quirky. Isn't that her
No.
thing? I never.
Yeah,
I don't
but-
like her. I don't know why. I just find her annoying. Sorry, Zoe Deschanel.
She
Who will
is either
never know
annoying
about
or like
this.
there's people that think she's like the hottest woman on the planet.
Yeah, and I'm not saying she's unattractive. I'm just. I don't really get that necessarily. I don't know. I don't know.
Have you ever watched New Girl?
I've seen like a little bit of it. Well, don't move it too much because it's not.
It has to be like in the middle.
Well, I know, but you're gonna change the way it's said. Oh yeah,
No.
that's what I was gonna say too. It'll be fine. Don't worry. Sorry about the sound last episode. Like especially that weird thing at the end where it became.
Hopefully
like,
it won't
weirdly...
happen this episode because we're not using my phone.
Yes, we are using my phone, which I will get a new phone, probably on Black Friday because it's gonna be cheaper.
I want a new phone.
For now, we are using my phone, which is a little bit janky. I believe it's charging right now, but otherwise we may have to wrap up
I want an iPhone.
if it starts to run out of battery. So that'll be exciting. We should probably get to like what we're actually talking about, right?
Okay.
Okay.
You're talking about reality.
I am again delving into the murky realms of reality. There's just way too much more to talk about that I didn't get to last episode. I finished it, and I was like, oh wait, like I didn't talk about like half of the shit that I could be talking about with this topic.
These are going to be very conflicting episodes.
You mean our two stories or
Yes.
whatever? Yeah, exactly. Mine is very much a thingy, obviously, as was last time. Chloe's a little bit more
Murdery,
of a
mystery.
yes. So we're covering all of the words in the title of the podcast.
A mystery that ends in the murdery.
I'm not going to say great because murder's not good, but you know, it's you may have to talk about it. But mine is definitely going to be, you know, very discussion, but a little more scientific, religious discussion this time. So I'm kind of looking at it from those angles as opposed to last episode, which I basically covered like Western philosophy in terms of like what is reality, ooh, what is all of this stuff going on here with the things and the stuff. So
What?
I know, right? We're going Glavin. That's a Simpsons reference.
Oh.
Professor Frink.
Oh.
No.
No.
Yeah, this is because we're 10 years apart in age. Yeah, that's why.
I watched The Simpsons, though.
Yeah, but you started watching The Simpsons, like, when I stopped watching The Simpsons.
We have, like, different, like, ideas of The Simpsons. That's
Right.
weird.
We have, if you will, two separate universes of The Simpsons. It's like, you know, it's like our cosmology of The Simpsons between the two of us. It's like a multiverse of The Simpsons. I'm trying to segue into my topic.
Oh!
It's so hard and it's crashing so badly. So I'm gonna cover this like from a scientific standpoint first. Science. You can think of this as an extension of the science episode, whichever one that was.
The science guy.
Fuck yeah, Bill Nye.
Bill. Okay.
I love Bill Nye.
Everyone loves Bill Nye.
Yeah, he's the best. So physical cosmology. Okay, so this is the kind of the scientific attempt to answer this question: what is everything? What is being? What is the universe? You know, how do things work on like a fundamental level? What's really going on here? You know, so physical cosmology is the study of, you know, just like really stop prodding me. I don't know what you're doing.
I'm trying to figure out what's real.
I know what is all this.
I'm also just being annoying.
You're fine. So physical cosmology, it's the study of the largest scale structures and dynamics of the universe. This is all obviously copied from Wikipedia, and is concerned with fundamental questions about its origin, structure, evolution, and ultimate fate. Okay, so basically,
ultimate fate.
What's going to happen? Is the universe going to infinitely expand until it's nothing and it turns cold? Is it going to recollapse into itself in a sort of big crunch? We've all heard of the Big Bang, but there's also a big crunch where some people,
would that hurt?
It would. Yes, I guess. I'm not sure.
I feel like that's the question with the end of the world.
That is the ultimate question. Will it hurt? Yeah.
Or will it be like, this is the end, where like you eventually get like raptured?
We'll talk about all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
For the most part. So,
Revelations.
There will be many, many revelations.
Ooh, we should talk about Revelations in the Bible, because that's some crazy shit.
Yeah. So this whole idea of like cosmology, you know, like in the sort of Western tradition, right? The Copernican principle. This is kind of what started out like the scientific pursuit of this in a way, right?
The sun, or no, we're in the center?
No. This is what replaced the Earth-centric view of the universe. This is the heliocentric view of the universe.
Sun-centered.
Sun-centered. So Copernicus sort of realized through observation that the Earth is not in fact the center of the universe, and everything is not in fact spinning around the Earth, but in fact everything is spinning around the sun. And it's in these kind of like concentric circles. So this gets refined by Newton in this sort of like classical era, right? The classical mechanics during the Age of Enlightenment. And what he described was, again, the motion of macroscopic objects, right? Planets, moons, stars, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And refined the actual dynamics and mechanics of what was going on with them.
So that's cosmology.
That's kind of like cosmology, the large scale pursuit of what's really going on here. And, you know, this worked pretty well for, you know, just like any kind of object, right? Newtonian mechanics works for, you know, human beings and like objects that we deal with in our everyday lives. But what it does not work well with is atoms and the quantum scale and like the things that are just really, really small or going really, really fast. It just doesn't work too well for that, for technical reasons that we won't go into.
Why are you talking like that?
I like to make little voices.
I like it.
Good. You said it like you didn't like it.
No,
You're like, why are you doing that? I'm just doing my podcasting thing, you know. I'm being like what's a good reference, like, you know, just some like zoo animal, you know, radio, you know, like morning radio kind of thing, you know, where you like make little silly voices. Like the Dan Le Batard show, you know, they do like silly stuff like that.
Or like, what was the one on Parks and Rec? The douche.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's always like something and the something, you know. So that's that. I don't know. I guess that's what I'm doing. So there was this like realization that classical mechanics like couldn't deal with like these really tiny objects. You know, this is around like the turn of the 20th century. You know, people are kind of like dealing with the fact that everything is made up of these like tiny little, you know, point-like objects that we call atoms, and then there's different kinds, and there's all these fucking particles, and there's like so fucking many. I've like read about this shit before. I don't remember like 90% of what I read on like Wikipedia a billion times. It just gets very complicated.
Much.
There's just so much, and I think that's like the big realization, you know, in the modern era, that reality is much more complicated and not kind of what we perceive it to be than like you could ever fucking imagine, right? Because when you look at it, like atoms, right, they exist within this like superposition of different states, right? Whether
and we can like see that now.
Well, we can see it, but only vaguely. So in quantum, I guess I'll talk about quantum mechanics now.
Yes.
So the reason why it's called quantum mechanics is because there are these quantized values, right? Quantized means at a discrete value. So at 1 or 2 or 3, not 1.2 or 2.7 or, you know, 3.9. It's just this or this or this. And there are these certain quantized values of energy, momentum, and all the other like ways you can describe a particle that are always at these discrete values.
That are what?
That are always at these discrete values.
Okay.
So, in other words, like, the universe isn't, you know, kind of like, things are like jumping from one kind of state to another kind of state. But while they're doing that, there's also this thing called wave-particle duality, where, like, objects, like atoms and protons and things, they act both like waves and particles, right? So you probably heard about this in reference to like light.
Physics.
In your in like a high school physics class. But like everything kind of works that way, where everything is kind of like a wave and kind of like a particle.
Which makes no sense to me. I don't...
It implies this kind of like dual nature to reality, or like in some way reality is like has more than one aspect to it, and we kind of don't know why exactly. Which also kind of gets to what's called the uncertainty principle.
Ooh.
Which is that not all aspects of a given object can be known with exact certainty at the same time. So not all aspects of a given object, you know, like an atom or a proton or a neutron or whatever, can be known with exact certainty at the same time. If I know exactly how fast something is going, I can't know exactly where it is. If I know exactly where it is, I can't know exactly how fast it's going.
Why?
That's the mystery.
Oh.
You know, we don't know why exactly. People are working on it, you know. They win Nobel Prizes for figuring out more shit about why. Why is that?
Oh, like the first woman who won in 50 years for science.
Exactly. I think it was like 55 years, actually. I think it was 1963 was the last woman. And then the woman before that was in 1903. So it was...
Oh my gosh.
It was 60 years between and then 55 years between. And even she was really surprised. I know. Like when they told her that, I was like listening on BBC. When they told her that, she was like, really? She was like, oh, I didn't realize it was that few. So like she didn't know. But yeah, exactly. Like that's a good reminder that as we talk about like any scientific pursuit, women have contributed, you know, just as much as men, especially considering the restrictions upon, you know, under which they've been doing these things, you know, in a lot of cultures, including our culture, you know, for a long time. You know, that, yeah, it's like important to, you know, kind of recognize that too. As I'm talking about like Newton and like, you know, Einstein, and like the men tend to get like picked out.
Marie Curie!
But yeah, people like Marie Curie or, you know, any number of female scientists. Anyway, so this kind of leads into this like more modern contemporary pursuit called the theory of everything. So this is like kind of the cutting edge of what, you know, science really thinks is like really going on here, right?
Oh, that's weird.
And
to like think to even process.
I know.
What is really going on here?
It's very existential. But science tries to make it like very, you know, particular and nailed down, which appeals to me. So the theory of everything is, quote, a hypothetical, single, all-encompassing, coherent, theoretical framework of physics that fully explains and links together all physical aspects of the universe, close quote.
I don't know.
From Wikipedia.
I don't understand any of that.
So we'll break it down. So a hypothetical, right? It's not proven.
Okay.
None of I'll talk about general relativity, which has a lot of experimental backing to it, but then I'll talk also about other theories that do not really have experimental background and not clear how they actually could. So that's why it's kind of hypothetical. And it's single, right? So it's not that it works with like planets and humans and then doesn't work with like atoms and light. Or vice versa, it works with everything. It describes everything.
Okay.
Right?
And then all-encompassing.
It's all-encompassing.
Coherent.
Coherent means that it works in both realms in the same way, right? That I can describe the motion of a planet in the same way I can describe the motion of a proton in exactly the same terms, like mathematical terms,
and
right?
then what is a framework of physics?
So a theoretical framework of physics is like a group of like laws and principles and theories that describe the motion and nature of objects, right?
And so this describes the universe and links together all physical aspects of the universe.
Exactly. So
break it down now.
Right. What is reality from this point of view is, okay, let's make like a list of everything and a way to understand everything. Which is not unlike what I'm going to talk about in the second half of my topic, which is like the religious, ways of doing it. It's sort of like the same impulse or instinct, but in science, it's all about like observation, hypothesis, like experiment, retesting. It's like a more like systemized kind of like way to try to get to that same answer of like what is everything and what is everything do, or what is everything like, right? It's that like essence versus I can't remember. It's like one of those dichotomies that I talked about in the last episode. So in that same way, there's this like dichotomy that I was just kind of referencing between what works at the large scale and what works at the quantum scale.
Right.
So this sort of attempt to create a theory of everything started out with general relativity in the modern era, we could say. And general relativity is, the Einsteinian theory that the curvature of space-time is directly related to the energy and momentum of whatever matter and radiation are present. So mass deforms space-time, and that is what creates gravity. And we again go back to the science episode for a fuller kind of diving into that. We've kind of already done that topic a bit. But what this also leads to is black holes.
Right.
Black holes are...
That's just what I was about to mention.
Yes. That's clearly the next thing that comes up whenever you're talking about general relativity. Like, ooh, fucking black holes. What the fuck are they? Those are so cool. So, black holes, it's this idea that there is a point in space-time where there's so much gravity that it's deformed to such an extent that even light cannot escape it. So a photon, approaches a black hole and it gets sucked in, never to come back out again. Now...
that we think.
Well, exactly, except that
right?
Now we're kind of rethinking that principle in light of a lot of the experiments and like work by Stephen Hawking, who obviously came up with Hawking radiation, or like he's the one whose name got ascribed to that, right? This idea that actually the black hole itself creates radiation that subtly like releases particles from within it and energy from within it, and therefore over time black holes are going to dissipate and like go away or whatever is going to happen. But in the more immediate term, what we know black holes also do is create what are called gravitational lensing, which is the bending of light from a distant object around a black hole to make it seem like there are like two of them or like four of them, which I think is kind of cool. This is one of the ways in which general relativity has been experimentally proven, because Einstein predicted that this kind of thing would happen and the exact way in which it would happen. And then it did happen, which is so fucking crazy that he just, like, by math and, like, his thoughts was like, oh yeah, this thing where, like, you see two of a distant galaxy, as if there were, like, a lens in the sky because of black holes. That's you're gonna find that out. And then, like, fucking almost 100 years later, I think, we do, and we find it, and we're like, oh shit, he was right.
So it's like sucking in light?
And as it's sucking in the light, it's doing that because it's curved, right? It's an area of deep curvature, right? You can think of this as like a whirlpool within like a river.
Okay.
Right. So if you had, like, say, you know, a bunch of, you know, colored balls going down a river, right? And you you know, they would be kind of like moving around that whirlpool, right?
Yes.
Right, yeah. And if, you know, you had like a coherent, like, you know, kind of stripe of like a different color going down the middle, it would like go around that curvature and then come back in the middle. So at one point you would see,
there's a
there were like
space
two, but it was really one and then one.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that's what's
Yeah.
happening to the light. And it's creating this impression of multiple objects, whereas behind the black hole, there's just one object.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like crazy. But it's like a real thing. Like, we've seen many of these. Astronomers use them to see super distant galaxies, because what they also do is like make really
Can you
distant
look
galaxies, you know,
through
look closer.
black holes?
No, you cannot look through a black hole. That's kind of the whole point of why it's called black, because you can't see light within it, right? It's black because it sucks in all the light that's directly around it. So we can never see them per se, but we can see the radiation coming off of them, and we can see their gravitational lensing effects. And now we can actually also see what are called gravitational waves. Now, this is something we like just did like in the past few years.
I remember we talked about this.
Right, with the LIGO experiment, where, you know, we can actually detect the deformature of space-time through gravitational waves. You know, essentially, it's like if you know, are looking at a wave on the ocean, and then you had a little, you know, ship on the top, and it's just like slightly moved by that little wave. They measure, you know, how much that moves, and they can see these gravitational waves. But you can read about like the LIGO experience if you want like a technical explanation or whatever. So, you know, general relativity, quantum mechanics, you know, they're both great. They're you know, pretty cool. They're very elegant. They work, but they only work in their own respective realms. And those realms...
What do you mean?
So, again, general relativity works for macroscopic objects. Planets, people, stars, you know, tables, all that kind of stuff, right? Quantum mechanics works for, like, atoms and protons and light and that kind of stuff. But if you try to describe the motion of planets with quantum mechanics, the numbers come out all wrong, and vice versa. So we know that they just are not describing the same universe in a way, but we know they exist within the same universe because we exist to detect like quantum stuff.
Okay, so then I guess the question is, what does that mean?
Right, exactly. And
why is that?
Right, and kind of the best like ideas about this, and these are the ones that like really don't have any kind of experimental, you know, backing, nor really could they. You know, string theory, right? So that's the first one I'm going to talk about. So string theory, you may have heard of it. It's pretty cool. It's like the new kid on the block, sort of. There's an even newer kid on the block, so we'll talk about that too. String theory is a type of quantum gravity theory, okay? Quantum gravity theory relates to how does gravity work on the smallest scales, okay? Because the thing is, like, gravity, it's like really strong, right? It keeps the planets in orbit around the sun, but it's very weak over short over short distances, right? Like, I'm exerting a gravitational effect on, like, Chloe right now.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean I'm, like, pulling you towards me. It's just very, very tiny, right? Because I'm very tiny, and you're also very tiny. So we don't deform space-time that much.
You're tinier.
That is true, but only slightly. Although I do
in the
I do
scale
have
of
more
the
mass.
universe, we're quite small.
I do have more mass than you because I weigh, what, like 135, 140? You weigh, like, 110?
I weigh like none of your beeswax.
Yeah, exactly. Less than me. Totally. So actually, I would pull you towards me. Yes.
Wow.
So it's really hard to describe gravity in the quantum realm because it's such a small time, or such a small scale, and the things are so small of mass, right? But what string theory does is it kind of explains all these mysteries by kind of positing this idea that particles are not actually these point-like particles that we perceive them to be. In fact, what's actually really going on is that they are one-dimensional strings, right? So not points, but strings.
And that's like space-time.
And that's what creates space-time. Now, if you're bigger than one of these strings, the string just looks like a point. But if you exist on the scale of the string, then you would perceive it as this one-dimensional string.
So we are bigger?
We're
And that's why we see it as a point?
yes, we're so much bigger. We're in, like, a different realm of existence, you know, in essence, so to speak. Properties of all objects, right? Everything essentially is actually created by a vibration of these strings, and that's why things are the way they are. And one of the vibrations of those tiny, tiny little strings creates what's called a graviton, which is a particle that we have not yet detected or found, but is theorized to exist, which carries the force of gravity. And that's what creates gravity, and that's why we can call it a type of quantum gravity theory, because it explains both those things in, like, one theory. And string theory could also explain, if it is true, many other mysteries in physics, like how black holes work, how the universe began, why solids and liquids are the way they are, which is called, like, condensed matter physics. It's just a very useful theory. You know, it's just like there can't really be any evidence that exists for it because we can't detect anything at that scale. So, like, okay. But what's also grown out of string theory is what's called M theory. Also for which there is no, like, real evidence, but...
Theory.
Theory in a scientific sense usually means that there's a great amount of evidence to back it up. But in a colloquial sense, a theory, a hypothesis, you know, a sort of, you know, sketched out idea of how things might be. So M theory, though, is our best guess right now for what is this kind of, like, theory of everything. The TOE, as people like to say, who are nerdy, like me. So what M theory does is it unifies quantum physics and general relativity. So that kind of central issue of modern, you know, cosmology that we were talking about earlier. And what it also does is combines all 5, you didn't even know there were 5 of the different versions of string theory. And it posits that strings are one-dimensional cutouts of a 2-dimensional membrane in 11-dimensional space-time. Right?
What?
'Cause that's just what would make the most sense logically, intuitively. I'm joking for technical reasons, which we won't go into. So it expands one-dimensional strings into what are called multi-dimensional branes.
What?
Isn't that fun?
I don't like that. Oh, I don't like that.
Now, this isn't like the brain in your head. It's BRANES. It's a brain, the object brain.
Are they alive?
No. It's not that. That's not what they're saying. but, even though there's no, experimental evidence for this, it is kind of borne out by this sort of, mathematical consistency. There are these different tests that they've put it to that it's kind of passed. Okay. So, all that aside, what we really do know right now about what is the nature of the universe is that it is expanding. So that question that we started out with, are we going to end in a big crunch? Probably not. Probably what's going to happen, if anything, is, it's just going to expand forever. The big rip, as people call it, sometimes. Because we do know that the universe is expanding because of this thing called dark energy, which you'll also recall from...
We talked about that
a previous episode. Exactly. And dark energy plays into what's called the lambda CDM model, the lambda cold dark matter model of, cosmology. This is kind of like our standard model understanding right now that's backed up with experimental data. Okay. And this tells us that the universe, basically started with the Big Bang, and that it's now a consequence of the structure that expanded from that initial, explosion. And that it is expanding at an accelerating rate. This is what we call the cosmological constant, which is denoted by the Greek letter lambda, which is why it's called lambda cold dark matter, model. And it's frequently referred to as the standard model, because it's the simplest one that provides a reasonably good account of, kind of the main properties of the cosmos, right? The existence and structure of what's called the cosmic microwave background.
And this is all happening pretty slowly, right?
Yes. After that initial explosion, things progressed at a much more measured pace over the next, what has it been, 14 billion years, I think, that the universe has been around?
I don't know why you're asking.
Is that the current... I think that's... I don't know. I'm kind of pulling that out of my ass, but I think that's right. I don't know. I'll do corrections next time, if it's wrong. So the cosmic microwave background is this kind of imprint of the Big Bang. 13.8, excuse me.
Billion years.
Billion years.
That was good, though. 14, you had it.
I'm pretty nerdy. It also best explains the large-scale structure of the distribution of galaxies and the abundance of hydrogen, helium, and lithium, as well as that accelerating expansion of the universe observed, in light from distant galaxies and supernovae. Some of which work has been done at the University of Hawaii in the past, several years.
How do they know... Or why is helium, lithium, and whatever, why is that so important?
Because those are the main constituents of, stars. And stars are what make up most of the mass of, the visible, mass of the universe.
But we're not a star.
No, but we are... It was necessary for stars to form and to have supernovae before we could exist. Because there are... elements that exist within us that are really necessary for our functioning that were created only in supernovae. They wouldn't be created otherwise.
So, are we now Jewish?
Why would we be Jewish?
Because I've accepted this as fact.
What is fact?
The idea that we come from stars.
Is that a Jewish idea?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Oh, I thought you would understand. Then the joke wasn't funny.
I did not. Sorry, I did not get it. But that does kind of segue into what I'm going to talk about next, which is the religious cosmologies. And I'll just kind of briefly touch on each of these, because I'm kind of going on for a long time.
It's why those who practice Judaism are against tattoos. Highly frowned upon, because you're marking this beautiful structure that was made from stars. Sure.
I suppose I can see the internal logic of that. So you started us off with Jewish, sort of Jewish cosmology in a way. I'm also going to talk about Buddhist cosmology. So in Buddhist cosmology, there's like way, way more to all of these that I'm going to talk about. But I wanted to just highlight what they call vertical cosmology, which is the idea that the universe exists of many worlds, of many planes or realms, all stacked one on top of the other in layers. And each world corresponds to a mental state or a state of being. And a world is not really like a location so much as it is the beings which compose it. It's sustained by their karma, and if the beings in a world all die or disappear, the world disappears too. Likewise, a world comes into existence when the first being is born into it. And obviously that was a quote from Wikipedia.
Obviously.
I mean, I'm sure you could tell that. But I wanted, I thought this one was really interesting because it really fed into what I talked about last episode in terms of like anti-realism. One of the ideas in anti-realism is that the universe is created by perception, right? Perception is necessary to create a physical universe. And that seems like it's like a lot of Buddhist cosmology as well. It's like created in your mind. Or at least this realm or this plane, right, is. So I thought that was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Pretty key.
Pretty cool.
That's key.
It's key. I'm also going to talk about Hindu cosmology, which is that time is, cyclic, right? So that there's not like one straight arrow. There was no beginning to the universe. There was no end to the universe. It all just is, man.
I feel you,
right,
man.
I know, and that there's a bunch of different theories within Hindu cosmology as to what like the nature of the universe is as well. They didn't like take one particular theory or idea on that, but they did hold true to this idea of like time being cyclic. So I was also going to talk about Jain cosmology. If you've heard of Jainism. So Jain cosmology, it considers the universe like an uncreated entity, existing since infinity, having no beginning or end, and Jain texts describe the shape of the universe as similar to a man standing with legs apart, an arm resting on his waist, for some reason. Not to make light of it, this universe, according to Jainism, is narrow at the top, broad at the middle, and once again broad at the bottom.
Okay.
Which I just thought was like it was all just very oddly specific. So I'm not sure. Obviously quote from Wikipedia, and I wanted to do another quote from Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
Thank you, Wikipedia. From kind of a Jain text. So quote, "Some foolish men declare that a creator made the world. The doctrine that the world was created is ill-advised and should be rejected. If God created the world, where was he before the creation? If you say he was transcendent and needed no support, where is he now? How could God have made this world without any raw material? If you say that he made this first and then the world, you are faced with an endless regression." Close quote.
I don't...
In other
That's
words,
unsettling.
If God made the world out of nothing, then who made God? It's that idea. Which I've always thought, ever since I was a little kid sitting in Catholic church, that was like a pretty good argument against like the existence of God in the way that they thought. It's like, yeah, but there's this kind of like logical fallacy that's inherent within like this central doctrine of Christian faith. But anyway, not to go all, unbeliever on you. Actually, I was going to talk about the Jewish faith next.
Okay.
Sort of like Abrahamic religions. So there was this interesting kind of like shift, okay? So like, around the time of Jesus or a little bit earlier, right? So like, right around the 0 point, 2000, so, some odd years ago, the Greek idea that God had actually created matter replaced the older idea that matter had always existed, but in a chaotic state. This concept called creatio ex nihilo.
Oh.
Right, which is, created from nothing.
Which is
it's kind of what we're...
Unsettling.
It is kind of weird to think about, like, other than what is nothing. I don't know. It's now an accepted orthodoxy of most denominations of Judaism, Christianity, right? Creatio ex nihilo. Most denominations of Christianity and Judaism believe that a single, uncreated God was responsible for the creation of the cosmos, as it is. And that the nature of the cosmos, I suppose, is like, kind of mysterious. I'm not sure how... I mean, at least in my experience with Christianity, there didn't seem to be, like, that kind of, like, full fleshed out attempt to explain what the universe is or why. But maybe I just didn't read the Bible enough. I'm not sure. But I wanted to also talk about the Genesis narrative. The Israelites, Jewish Israelites, believed that the earth was flat and that there was a morally neutral underworld that you went to when you died until around 330 BCE, when they adopted the Greek belief that the underworld is a punishment and that the upper realm is a reward. So again, kind of an interesting shift, right around the turn of the millennium, or so. And then I just wanted to finish out by talking about Islamic cosmology. So in Islamic cosmology, there's this duality. Islamic thought characterizes the entire cosmos into two domains: the unseen universe, which is imperceptible to mankind in general, and has properties that are, like, just completely unknown to us, unknowable by us, and includes, Allah, angels, paradise, hell, the seven heavens, and the divine throne. So that's all in the unseen universe. And then there's the observable universe, which is perceptible to us through the five senses, and, possibly enhanced by, instruments. And what the Quran says about that is, quote, Allah is he who is the only God, the knower of the unseen and the observed, close quote. So, this idea that God stands apart from reality, right? And sees it as it really is, or what really is, and then what only appears to be to us, which is that kind of, like, observable, unobservable. And I think, again, a lot of these religious mythologies, cosmologies, narratives, stories bear kind of a striking resemblance in fundamental ways to the scientific current understanding of what we think the universe really is, right?
How so?
In the sense that there's the strong sense of dualities, right? Different realms of existence. The religious doctrines talk about them in sort of metaphysical terms, but essentially they're describing the same thing as, quantum mechanics as opposed to general relativity. It's two realms of existence that are incomprehensible to one another, one of which we can't actually experience or directly describe in all detail. So, there's this strong aspect of, like, a mysterious realm existing that I guess has just been part of our collective unconscious for, like, a long time. Ooh. That, comes out of this. And just this, like, I guess, inherent mystery as to what happened before the universe and what will happen after the universe. And is that actually a fair way to describe what's really going on here? Is there a before or an after?
Yeah.
Neither science nor religion has any, real answer.
The first question is there a before? Is there an after?
Right, exactly.
Whoa.
Even apart from what the universe is, what is kind of the structure above the universe? And I think different religious, ideologies have attempted to, come up with answers to that question. It's kind of like one of those fundamental questions that's always been with us and always will be, because ultimately we're never going to know what reality is. I think that's just part of reality. Mystery
forever unsolved.
Yep.
Stamp.
There it is. And that's the end of my two-parter on what is reality. I went on for a fucking long time.
Yeah, I know.
I hope that was interesting. Okay. Now you do your murdery thingy.
Okay. Take your glasses off.
Okay.
I hate you.
I know. Just go. Just do your thing.
So, let's talk about...
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you. Okay.
Let's talk about Ursula and Sabina Eriksson.
Okay.
Get ready for a wild fucking ride, everybody. This shit's crazy.
Whoa.
I'm excited. Okay, so first let's talk a little bit about them. So they were born November 3rd, 1967. They're twins, identical twins. The sisters grew up in Sundvarmland, Sweden. And this is important to note that they have no history of mental health issues at all. They both had a seemingly normal childhood. So by the year 2000, Ursula was living in the USA, and Sabina was in County Cork, Ireland, with her partner and 2 kids. So 8 years later, in May of 2008, Ursula decides to visit her sister over in Ireland. Within 24 hours, they were on a ferry to Liverpool. When they got there, they went to St. Anne's Street Police Station to report concerns over Sabina's kids' safety. Which begs the question, why couldn't they report this back in Ireland? And why are they going to London in the first place? A few hours later, they've headed to London via a coach bus. However, they never made it because they were kicked off the bus for strange behavior. So they wouldn't let the driver take their bags, which caused him to believe they were carrying something suspicious. So what he does is he calls the retail manager, and her name's Melissa Dutton, and she takes care of it. She arrives on scene. She sees them acting strangely. They're clutching their bags to their chests, whispering. She sees this and she calls the police. So what happens is the police talk to them, finds out their situation, gives them a number to call another coach to London, but they didn't. They took off on foot. And eventually they walked onto the M6 motorway. So this is a huge, huge 8-line highway.
Don't do that.
Not for pedestrians at all.
My God.
Meanwhile, we have a reality TV show that follows the lives of specific traffic police in Britain's M6 motorway. It's like Cops, but for highway accidents and crazy dramatic shit.
Yeah.
So what happens is they catch the twins on their CCTV cameras. And so what they do, they dispatch 2 officers out there to get them safely off the motorway. And as the second set of officers are being dispatched, they hear on the radio that one of the twins runs straight out into traffic and gets hit by a car. So as they arrive, they're they hear this, they're expecting serious injury. They're expecting even a body, but she survived. She was completely fine. She was on her feet. And so now they have just these 2 girls, they don't know they're twin sisters yet, but girls that are just standing there in the middle, on the median, and they're pulled over. Shit gets crazier. So as the on-scene officers briefed the ones that had just arrived, and there's video of all of this. You can see all of this on YouTube. One of the twins runs out into oncoming traffic again. She straight up gets hit by a lorry, they call it, which is a semi-truck. Straight up truck. Seconds later, the other one also runs into traffic. And there's visible damage to the windshield of a sedan. She hit it straight on. And so keep in mind that all of this is happening on a live reality TV show.
Oh my fucking God.
Yeah. So we have these 2 women hit by cars. One twin is unconscious. The other twin has serious leg injuries, compound fractures. Her leg, quote, exploded. But she was moving around and being restless, and she becomes aggressive. She becomes violent. She starts screaming things like, "Where are the police? I'm I know you're not real, I don't recognize you, or they're going to steal your organs, and all types of weird shit. But at this point in time, the cops are like, she's nuts, she's high, she's on drugs or something. So just as all this is happening, the other twin who was unconscious wakes up, becomes just as aggressive, and eventually gets up off the ground, punches the police officer, and takes off running onto the opposite side of the highway, straight into oncoming traffic again. So it ended up taking 6 people, 2 officers and 4 people from the public, to restrain her, the one who crossed the lanes. So, yeah, your face right now.
What the fuck?
So what? Yeah, in my notes, it literally says, so WTF. Is she
Nice.
drunk? Is she Is she on drugs?
And I did not read that.
Is this some serious head injury? And like violence and like sudden like amnesia or confusion is like a possible reaction for those with serious head injuries.
It kind of reminds me of a condition that I read about one time where you like can't recognize your family because like the parts of your brain that like identify them and like associate these feelings with them get disconnected.
That's
so you think they're like pod people, or there's like some grand conspiracy against you. Maybe it was something like that, because when they were saying like, I know you're not real, you're just like out to get me or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So she's injured, remember? So
Right.
she can't be treated if she isn't relaxed. So when the ambulance got there, they sedated her.
Of course.
So one officer thought it could have been some kind of suicide pact. Both the twins were injured, but they continued to fight against the ones that were trying to help them. So in total, Sabina Eriksson, she's the one who was doing the running. She runs into traffic a total of 3 times. So the one time when that first got the police attention, the second time after getting hit by the semi-truck, and the third time when she escapes from the police officer and crosses the median. So 3 times. So at this point, they have these 2 women in the hospital, and they don't know their identities. So what they do, they end up searching their possessions. They find multiple cell phones, no IDs, but eventually they discover that, I think they find passports or something, that they're identical 40-year-old twins Sabina and Ursula Eriksson. So then they have these random women, like, why were they on the motorway? Why did they run? Were they running from the police? And if they were running from the police, why? And why were they violent? Why were they fighting? So this is just half of the story. Shit gets crazier. So now we have Ursula, who was wait. Sabina did not get hit by the truck. Ursula got hit by the truck. She is in critical condition. But just 5 hours after the incident, her sister Sabina is released. She was the one who was not hit by a truck. And Sabina was the one that was first unconscious. And the one who ran first, I believe.
Okay.
Yes. So she's released from the hospital. They filmed the process of her going through custody, but they didn't put it on air for legal reasons. But I watched a BBC documentary, and they showed the footage. So she says something weird. She says, quote, "We say always in Sweden that an accident rarely comes alone. Usually at least one more follows, perhaps 2, end quote. And this whole time, she's worried about the little things instead of the big things. She's in custody after assaulting a police officer and like endangering traffic. But she's worried about how she looks. She's worried about what she's going to wear when she's going to get out of this hospital gown. And she never asks about her sister at all. Either she didn't care or she couldn't remember. That's also the question here. So she passed a drug test. Both of them passed a drug test when they got to the hospital. There were no drugs or alcohol found in their possession, and they passed the drug tests. So Sabina was charged for assaulting a police officer and endangerment on the motorway. At this point, Ursula is still recovering in the hospital. When they call relatives, the relatives say they have no clue why Sabina and Ursula were even over there in England. It didn't make any sense. So Sabina is released. Her sister is recovering in the hospital. The next day after Sabina was released, here's what happened according to key witnesses. So she's walking around and she is spotted by a man named Glenn Holinshed, who was walking his dog, walking with his dog, and he was walking with his friend Peter Malloy. So she looks a little disoriented, and he ends up asking her if she's what she does is she's like, oh my God, I like your dog. And so they get talking about dogs, but she eventually tells him how her sister's in the hospital and that she's basically just looking for a bed and breakfast. Glenn says there are not any around here, but he offers his place. Peter, the best friend, as they're walking over to Glenn's place, he sees that she has 2 cell phones, a laptop, a few cigarettes, and a red cardigan. At this point, once they get to the house, she starts to become really paranoid. She, shuts the curtains. She starts acting really weird. She thought the cigarettes that she had, been smoking all day might suddenly be poisoned. So she stays overnight. And the next day, Glenn walks out to his neighbor who was washing his car. Glenn was staggering. Glenn was bleeding. And he said, she stabbed me and collapsed. So, turns out, she stabbed Glenn Holinshed 5 times as he was making her breakfast.
What?
So, CCTV captures her running from his house, carrying a lump hammer. One witness in his car, just this random guy, spots her. He sees her, bang her own head with the hammer, so he gets out of the car and takes the hammer from her. He describes her as having blood on her head and bloody matted hair. Quote, primitive type of rage. What she ended up doing is she hit him in the head with a roof tile that she had in her pocket and ran off. So by this point, she's being chased by the police. As she's being chased by the police, she runs onto a bridge that's 40 feet above the highway and jumps. She survives.
What?
She survives with 2 broken ankles and a fractured skull. So here we are. Ursula, her sister, is released from the hospital 3 months later in September of 2008. And her sister recovers and she's relocated to Sweden. Sabina, on the other hand, is released from the hospital the same month and charged with the murder of Glenn Holinshed. So, as they investigate, right? They start their investigation. She replies no comment to every question, and she never tells her side of the story. So we will never know what the fuck was happening here. So, the trial happened 18 months later. 18 months later. So Sabina is assessed by 2 psychiatrists and determined to be mentally ill during the time of the murder. A man named Professor Nigel Eastman, one of Britain's leading forensic psychiatrists, he diagnoses them with induced delusional disorder, or Folie à Deux. Did I say that right?
I don't fucking know.
Folie à Deux. Deux.
Deux.
Oui, baguette.
Folie deux.
Eiffel Tower.
Paris. Eiffel Tower. Oh, mademoiselle. Come to my room and I will pour you some champagne. We will listen to some...
I have a poodle.
Sweet music. I have a poodle. You may pet him. You may pet anything else if you like.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Induced delusional disorder. Folie à Deux, which is a psychiatric Wikipedia definition.
Psychiatric.
disorder. I'm just mumbling. A psychiatric disorder where delusional beliefs and sometimes hallucinations are transmitted from one person to another. So this is something that's very, very rare. What happens is that the sufferer abruptly becomes ill. It could last a few weeks, and it can come and go in severity, and then it goes away. Sedation will not get rid of the illness, but it can, quote, take the edge off. So Sabina was labeled a, quote, secondary sufferer, while her sister Ursula is the, quote, primary. Sabina pleaded guilty to manslaughter with diminished responsibility on September 2nd, 2009. And she, I think, was up for parole in 2011. I didn't Google what's going on with them now. But yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, that's a pretty
Let me run
story.
into traffic and then stab a man for no fucking reason.
I guess there must have been something in her head at some point.
I think it was like a weird, like, shared delusion.
Could be. Yeah, that seems most likely. I just wanted to mention, I mean, obviously my sources were Wikipedia. I basically went to the cosmology page and just, like, branched off from there, which I think is a pretty cool thing about Wikipedia that you can do. Just, like, get into a fucking Wikipedia hole.
Have you ever played the Wikipedia game?
I'm not sure what that means.
So basically you press like random article and then you click on links and see how long it takes you to get to Jesus.
Okay, I like it. So are you done? Or did you want to do your sources too? Or?
Oh, okay. So my sources were Wikipedia and a BBC documentary titled Madness in the Fast Lane.
Good.
Madness in the Fast Lane.
I think they say madness.
Madness
In the fast lane.
The fast lane.
I think they say fast as well. Madness in the fast lane. I don't know. Anyway.
Weird shit in the news.
Weird shit in the news. What? Weird shit.
In the news.
Weird
shit
in the news.
Weird.
It's shit. So I'm going to do a story in the Washington Post by Lindsay Bever, and it is titled Police. Booby-trapped house felt like Indiana Jones. Agent was shot by a wheelchair. Pretty weird, huh?
Ooh.
Right? So this weird guy named Gregory Lee Rodevelt apparently is sort of a serial criminal, a bad dude, if you will. And in 2017, he was arrested for illegally possessing explosive devices. You know, he's like sort of a mad scientist criminal. So, you know, that's, if it were in a narrative film or TV show, would be kind of cool. But not in real life. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that shit. It's not worth it. But he had just been released from custody, you know, because he had to, like, take care of some, like, legal business or some shit. And while he was out, he actually went back to his home and kind of, like, booby-trapped the fuck out of it.
Why?
Because he's a dick, I guess. I don't know. What he knew, though, was, like, police were going to come look at this house, right? So I think that was, like, the idea. He was, like, setting it up for them. It's sort of like Home Alone in a way, which they mention in this article. So what they first found, the police did, when they came to the house, was a big, you know, like a van with, like, bear traps, essentially, like, all around it.
Oh my God.
So that's like the first thing. Cool?
That's just the first.
That's the first thing. And they also found a rat trap in the garage that was not actually set up, but they can tell was, like, meant to hold a shotgun shell. To, like, you know, if anyone stepped on it, it would, like, you know, shotgun their foot off or whatever. There was also a hot tub, which was, like, perched up on its side and was, like, gonna roll down when anyone opened the gate. Like fucking Home Alone.
Oh my God.
Or Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's what that one was like. They also found a wheelchair inside the house, and when one of them went to move it, there was like an explosive on it, I guess, and one of the officer's legs was hit by a piece of shrapnel.
What?
And they had to like take him to the hospital
real
immediately.
life?
Yeah, this is real fucking life. This happened like last Friday or something, some shit. So yeah, they just found like all this shit in the house, and it was like pretty crazy. And when they asked, Roosevelt, the perp, why he did this, or to tell him about like other traps in the house, all he said was, quote, "I would not race right in," close quote.
Oh!
Because he's a creepy motherfucker. Okay, now you go.
Okay.
You had some weird shit in the news, right?
I got it.
I've
I'm
got the
pulling
weird
it up
shit
right now.
on my phone. I've
Okay.
got the weird shit
So it's loading.
on my phone.
So this is from news.am.
A very reputable source.
Shut up.
Mine was
So-
from the Washington Post.
Oh, this isn't from this country.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because the ads are like, is that Russian?
I don't believe so. Or that might be. I'm not sure.
Anyway, the title is...
This might be some fake news, y'all.
But we're going to enjoy it.
Okay, cool.
The title is, "Man Given Bionic Penis, quote, went into 5-day coma a week after having sex for the first time," end quote. A man who was born without a penis has spent 5 days in a coma when he collapsed a week after having sex for the first time since getting a bionic penis. Andrew Wardle, 45, underwent an intensive 10-hour operation to fit the $50,000 euro bionic penis, which he has described as, quote, ridiculously big.
This cannot be a real story.
I don't know, man.
Bionic penis. Is that a thing?
He had a fever for days and was vomiting. They thought he had a neurovirus. CCTV shows thugs attacking 3 friends on their way home from university reunion. Quote, "He was supposed to be catching a train." What?
What is this? What have you dredged up? What did you find this on fucking Twitter or
No, this
Reddit?
was on Reddit.
Of course. Of course.
Ah.
Cool. I love it.
I think it happened.
I fucking love it. If you believe, then it could be true, I suppose. If you wish upon a star. So I think that's probably an episode, right?
1 episode.
Yay, 40 episodes down. 1 million to go. Thank you for listening to us and our stories.
Our stories.
Yes. So yeah, like, tell us things that you want to hear about.
Is The Independent a real site?
Yeah.
It's on The Independent.
Cool. I believe it now. So, yeah, you can email us, mysterymurderythingy@gmail.com. Definitely send us, like, your thoughts and, like, ideas and shit. And weird shit in the news if you find it.
Follow us on Instagram.
On the gram. Chloe's been putting more shit up there.
More shit up there.
Good shit.
Good shit.
Right? Yeah, and just, like, tell all your fucking friends and shit.
Tell all your friends.
We take kind of a guerrilla, kind of like idea of marketing here at Mystery Murdery Thingy. We just invite you to do anything you can. If you want to, carve Mystery Murdery Thingy onto a hallowed memorial that happens to be in your town.
Yeah.
Is anyone going to stop you? If the police
No.
see you, yeah, but otherwise, no. So,
Otherwise, no.
that'd be cool. Write it on a bathroom wall. Just like write it on a homework assignment instead of what you're supposed to write. That could be kind of fun. Then your teacher finds out about it. It's a nice little moment between you. Oh, I forgot to do my homework, but hey, listen to this podcast. Just anything, it's just a lot of different things. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally.
Can we go get McDonald's?
Probs not. Bye.
Bye.